Yes, those who have been hanging out, we're a couple minutes late because I think there may be an echo in the stream. Put it in the comments if there is. I can't get rid of it. I've been playing with it, but Brian and Danny say they can't hear it. This morning, we're going to be talking about how to develop the brand of yourself to be able to multiply sales. And this is a continuous. Last week, we talked about you being you. And this week, we're going to continue this conversation. We have some things we'll be talking about here. But first, let me bring up the best looking men in payments on the left-hand side of your screen. Well, I heard he lost his first golf match in a while. Didn't play well in the back, last couple holes this week. But I know he's going to come back with just a vengeance this weekend, Mr. Danny Shard. Danny, how's this golf game going to go this weekend? And how badly are you going to beat the people you play with?
I'm definitely going to use yesterday's round as motivation for this weekend. I need it. Yeah, it was a tough match, and I was 2 up going into 4 holes and lost the last 4 holes to lose the match. So it's deflating to the ego, but we bounce back and use it as motivation for the next one. It's going to be a good weekend. I'm excited. And happy Friday, High Five Nation. Good to be on here with you all.
It is good to be back together, and I have to make sure I bring up the man who will not be with us the next 2 weeks because he is taking his wonderful bride on a little vacation as she is taking her first time through the school year in a lot of years. I'll let him tell that she didn't start school. Mr. Brian Linky. Brian, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm great. And Dan, you know what? I think if we cut the Jack Daniels shots down to I don't know, half a dozen rather than a dozen, maybe you'd have won that tournament yesterday. But
I'm not much of a drinker when I'm on the course like
just
that.
me. Sorry,
I'm a competitor.
Anyway, yeah, we will be going. Brendan and I will be going down to the Florida Keys. School actually starts today in Warsaw on a Friday, which tells you like what these people like do. Like, why would you start school on a Friday? But anyway, she's retired, first year. So we're going to take advantage of it and do something that we haven't done in 37 years.
I think it's awesome, and we'll be living vicariously as you live on the vacation. Guys, we're going to start out because I've had several comments this last week as I've talked to people. They said they miss a year ago when we were doing this. We would always start out with some questions. They weren't always about sales, and they missed the banter. And so what we're going to start doing, if you're joining us live, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be watching your comments and things like that. But if you're joining us live, this is something that is not going to go into the recorded version where we post this afterwards. We're going to cut this out because I'm going to ask these guys a question. They don't know what's happening. But we used to do, a little pop culture references. But I'm going to ask them, did they watch Field of Dreams last night on Fox as the White Sox and the Yankees played among 8,000 people in the field of corn there in Iowa? Linky, I have to imagine you turned that on.
Okay. If you didn't watch that, then you're not breathing. I mean, my wife this morning said, "What's that? Is that why are they doing that?" I'm like, "Okay, honey, really?" No, that was an amazing scene. They need to do more things like that. Hockey does a similar thing, right, where they're playing outside, like at Fenway Park and Wrigley Field and things like that. But that game, and then plus the game itself, Yankees down 3 with 2 outs in the ninth, get a guy on and. Judge hits the 2-run homer, and then they get another home run to tie it, and then the White Sox win it in the bottom of the ninth with a home run. I mean,
with a walk-off? Come on.
Yeah, it was just perfect. But no, that was extremely cool. Did you know that those guys? I was reading something that those guys, the corn itself, they've been like doing the corn, making it like so perfect just for the last like year and a half. So here we are down to the time, and the storms that have come through the Midwest here in the last few days, it just kind of almost tore apart the entire. They worked 24 hours a day for 3 straight days, and they've got like these things like on the corn to have them standing straight up because they had it perfect, and then the storms blew them down, and they fixed it in working 24-hour days.
Absolutely. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, just making that work was absolutely amazing. The beauty of it, I read the story of the lady, I forget her name, that passed away in 2018 that owned the field, had convinced MLB to come and do this game. I think it's going to become an annual thing. I think it was just so much fun. The opening scene, I didn't catch it live, but I caught it later on social media, where Kevin Costner appears from the corn in the outfield. And the only thing that would have made it better for me if somehow James Earl Jones could have been sitting commentating in the stands somehow there. But I think we're unfortunately past that ability now.
It was a very cool thing, and I think it was a much needed thing, with this whole COVID thing and, with no fans there for a long time. I think this was something that not only sports fans, but baseball for sure, I think benefited from it because it was a lot of fun to watch.
It was. All right, so I'm going to continue my pop culture references and see if these guys have watched something that came out, I think, a couple days ago. I watched it last night, actually just before I turned it on because it's about an hour and 20 minutes. The Malice at the Palace on Netflix. It's a story of the fight between the Pacers and the Pistons now almost, I think, what was it? What year was it? Was it 2003? I already forget.
15 years ago.
18
years ago, something like that. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you remember were you watching that game, and do you remember where you were?
I remember when I was living in Columbia City, Northern Indiana, and I remember that I wasn't watching it live. And that's pre-social media, and I jumped in and immediately watched the news that night and just was devastated because I knew how good that team was. And first of all, if you haven't seen the documentary, highly recommend it. It's pretty something we can talk about maybe in a coming. It is maybe one of the best documentaries, and it really changed and flips between Jim Gray and the interviews with Jermaine O'Neal and Meta World Peace, Ron Artest, and Steven Jackson are just amazing. It's just really good. And Donnie Walsh is also prominently interviewed, and it's just really, really good. But
I was watching the game when it happened, and I remember sitting there numb, thinking I'm watching a movie or something like that. I couldn't believe how terrible Ron Artest was. I mean, now the fans are just awful, but they're fans. It's sports, right? You have to deal with that as a professional athlete. So with him laying on the scores table and doing that, I mean, it's okay. I think that was probably one of the worst things that I've seen in the NBA.
I would encourage you to watch it because I would have had that feeling until watching that, and I have had a different view of it. It wasn't good on either side, but certainly that situation was set up to be a boiling point, and they had 2 police officers in the whole building to begin with. 2.
I was at the Purple Porpoise in Tallahassee the day before the Florida State-Florida game, and the people in the bar, and it was just a packed house, and all of a sudden it was on the TV, and I don't think people I think people were thinking at the time that it wasn't real, it was some made up thing, and then when we realized that it wasn't, it was okay, is this really happening? But another Steven Jackson story, just to tell you. Do you remember when he was in the bar in Indianapolis and
8 Second Saloon? Yep.
And he walked out into the street, and there was all this mayhem going on, and he took the gun out of his pocket and he shot it straight up in the air.
Yep. Yeah. Yes.
Just in, Steven. You can't do that.
Yeah. It was Reggie Miller was also I encourage everyone who's a sports fan, a culture fan. It's a great documentary. It doesn't stretch out too long, hour and 24 minutes, I think it is. Just amazing. Also, the Woodstock 99 Bill Simmons documentary on HBO Max, also highly recommend. Now, let's get to what I wanted to talk about today. And let me drag my slides up here because I accidentally turned them off. There we go. All right, so we're going to be talking about something, and we're going to, over the next couple of weeks, it's me presenting to Danny and Brian a little bit of my philosophy of branding. So you can see that I'm bringing up some slides that are actually my consulting side of some things I do. And I am using this to build off what I call the brand equation. And let me present briefly just the brand equations. And some of you have probably heard me say this before, but simply this: story, who you are, what makes you what you want to do, where you are today and where you want to go, the whole story of who you are, plus marketing, telling of that story, how you tell that story, plus the reputation, how others tell the story about you and what they say about you equals your brand. And a lot of times we think about brand just simply being a set of logos and pieces, but it's much more than that. The logo is a piece of that. It's part of the artwork that represents who you are, but it's actually much more than that. And over the next couple of weeks, I just want to kind of talk about, and with Brian and Danny a little bit here, about how brand can help us when we fully understand that brand equation, and you can define it multiple different ways, but it can help us really make a stronger sale. Because I think this is a Seth Godin quote that I always use. A brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, relationships that taken together account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service, one sales representative, one merchant services professional, one payments professional over another, because of how they understand who that person is and choose to do business with them. And I think brand has become more relevant now than it's ever become. So I'm going to come back over to Brian and Danny and bring both of you guys up here. On that, I think when we, as sales professionals for so long, we were able, because of the lack of information about brands, about opportunities, about what was going on, we were able to walk into situations and often have people know much less about us and about what we're representing and get the sale than we can now. Do you guys agree with that? As Brian has taken his seat.
I'm not really sure, but just say that again.
So here's the thing: when you used to walk in and you were walking through the lower Manhattan, walking into business places, you could walk in and close that sale, and they didn't have to build that personal trust. A lot of times they weren't going to go and search you up on the internet. They weren't going to go and look at your reviews. They weren't going to ask around for you. They were going to take what they had, that experience with you for that short amount of time, and you had a real legitimate opportunity to close that. But now when you walk in, they're looking to buy something that they know more about, not just the story of what the product is. So, hey, I want this piece of product, but they're looking for a deeper understanding of who you are and what makes you you in order for that sale to happen. Do you agree or disagree?
I definitely agree. It's definitely a new day. People back then, in the mid '80s, didn't obviously know nearly as much as what people know now, right? I mean, it's just so much easier to research things and to know more about things. I mean, you can Google people's names just to pull up and see what they're about. Look on Facebook or any social media platform. I definitely think it's people are just a lot more knowledgeable. I mean, even like the news. There's a lot of times like I'm watching, the news at what is it called after the with Ted. I was going to say Ted Koppel with but they're doing all these stories, and like back in the '80s, it wouldn't even be a story because people wouldn't even know about it. So yeah, it's definitely a lot tougher now, I think, or tougher then. I mean, to go in, but again, everything has its pros and cons. I mean, so when you're talking to people that don't know a whole lot about it, that you can kind of paint that picture in their mind, and because back in the day, it used to be the saying was, it's easier to sell an intangible product than a tangible product because you can paint the picture in someone's mind of what it's going to be like.
And I think that is so much that. Danny, when we used to sell, when you first started in this industry, you'd walk into a place and you would say, hey, you need to accept credit cards. And they were making that change, and they didn't go and do any research, and they didn't care what terminal or piece of hardware was in there. And they don't really even aware who the processor was. And we were talking about this in the 5 with Danny. It's coming out next week. They were, totally oblivious to how the whole system works, and you walk in. Now there's much more to putting that sale together for most of the people we're selling to. It still happens sometimes for them to know, what the piece of hardware is and how many people like it and how many people use it and what the history is and how long have you been in the industry and who's actually processing payments, and they want to know a lot more about how everything works than they used to. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely, because merchants have been brought into our world so much. As saturated as our industry has gotten, what we've created is a more educated consumer, in this case merchants, right? They know the space better, they understand pricing more, and I think that's a good thing. I think transparency is key, and I think back then it was very easy. I mean, some that have been in the industry for several decades refer to those as the golden days, and in a bad way, I think that's because those were the days that merchants were naive, and you could kind of get away with a lot more, right? You could price gouge, you could set them up with these high tiered rates that inflated almost like balloon for mortgages. You could lease equipment at insane amounts of money that these merchants are paying for this low cost equipment. And they referred to it as the golden days because sales was easy. Merchants didn't understand it. Pricing was meant to be confusing. The industry was meant to be confusing. Don't worry about this piece of it. We do it. You're just going to make sure your money's in your bank account. We'll handle the rest, and it'll cost you this. And I think as saturated as the industry's gotten, it's really created this way of selling, and that way of selling is simplifying, educating, give them things for free that they should be getting and should have gotten all along. And I think it's a good thing the way that our industry's headed, and that a lot of industries are headed. People are more connected, like Brian was talking about now, than they ever have been before. And the whole branding thing, I think it's like you said, Nate, it's definitely deeper than just that surface level logo and what your slogan is and what you kind of stand for. I mean, a lot of your branding, falls to how you handle the back end after the sale, right? And how your support structure is, how you react in certain situations. Are you able to make things right when systems don't work properly, when funding doesn't work properly? Or do you just shrug and shake your head and say, well, that's just the business, sorry, better luck next time? And I think that is how, that brand goes so much deeper, and how you can really build on that and get down to the roots of who you are. And it really, starts at that surface, and it goes a lot further down the road, and how you support and build your brand on the back end.
My middle son said to me last weekend when he was home, because we were doing something. He's like, "Dad, how did you know anything? Like, how did you ever find out about anything without the internet and like a cell phone?" And I'm not really sure what the answer is, other than you watch the news on TV, you read a newspaper, which nobody does anymore. And I challenge everybody on this call the next time they get on an airplane to look around, because I do it every single time I fly, and see how many people are actually reading a newspaper anymore, an actual paper, not on their phone or on their tablet, but a paper. I'll help you with the answer. The answer is zero. It may be once, but he asked me. He goes, "How'd you know anything?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I still don't, but somehow I'm still here."
Well, and I think what's happened is our consumers are so much more understanding what's going on, and that has to put us on our game to make sure that we know more, because more is at our fingertips to understand what's going on. We always say you don't have to be a POS expert, but certainly to be successful in this industry, you need to understand a little bit about POS. Let me bring up a couple. I'm just going to skip a couple slides here on my presentation. Sometime I may do this whole presentation. But here's what I think a lot of times when telling your story, what you're really trying to do. You're trying to help the customer that you're working with, the people you're talking with, to know your story. And what you're really saying is, I understand the problem, and the problem is the problem that your customer is having. I understand a product, whether it's a service, a software, how you're doing, that's going to fix that. And the result is going to be a better version, a better opportunity. And in our case, it's going to be helping you accept payments for a lesser price and save time, save money, all these things. And so helping understand that we solve a problem. We do it by developing a product or a service that we're helping fix that problem. And by that, we're going to make you picture that the result of that is going to be you in a better place, whether with it's more money, more time, more energy. And so as we develop and learn to tell our stories and put our sales pitch together and understand that we're developing our brand, we need to be able to kind of create that way the problem that we're solving, and be able to start helping them visualize them getting that problem solved. Brian, what do you think is what do you think is the problem that most of our partners are solving for their customers? What is that problem? What is the biggest problem that they have now?
Well, again, I think the biggest problem, for most merchants, I think they would say, pricing is the problem, right? But rule number 5 is don't sell price, right? So I think, but I think if you were going to ask, if you had 10 merchants in a room and say, what's the biggest problem you have? I think the answer would be, I'm paying too much, right? And I know you're going to laugh, Nate, but now with cash discounting, obviously we can make that go away. But I think that would be the number one problem. But the other thing is as far as like building a relationship with a merchant, we're still getting calls in this office from merchants that don't know who their agent is, which to me is just mind-boggling in today's day. Like, how in the world can a merchant not know who their agent is? I mean, if the agent's doing half what they're supposed to be doing, how does your merchant not know who you are? So again, I think it's a combination of things. But again, you have to get out there, you have to work. All right, you have to get out of bed every day, and you have to get in front of people and make things happen.
I take my slides down here on my camera here, but Danny, one of the things I think a lot of times is we as sales professionals forget what problem we're actually solving for them. And it's not always the same problem for every merchant. And one of the struggles that we have is trying to identify that problem quickly and then presenting us as the person that's going to come alongside of them and help them with the product or solution we have and solve that problem. And certainly price has certainly been that, but in our world now, there's 10% of merchants that already have that, cash discount and all that. What are some other things as we present ourselves as problem solvers, as we help tell the story of who we are and how we're going to help them out? What are some of those other problems that we can be part of helping find that solution that sets us apart in the industry?
I think one of the biggest things that we do as salespeople is not necessarily solving problems. It's helping merchants identify what those problems are. And because a lot of times they don't even know it, right? They don't know how much better their business could run, how much more efficient they could be. When we're talking about solutions, right? When we're, upselling into more robust POS equipment, or even just a smoother checkout process for customers with a customer-facing screen or something like that. A lot of times you can approach these merchants, they think everything's great. They like the company that they're working with. They've got this terminal. They're getting their money. Everything seems to be going fine. And then you can maybe point out and start talking about some of these areas where they could improve. So it's not necessarily a problem, but could it be better? And that's when you kind of open their eyes up a little bit and start to identify some things that could make them more efficient, could save them some money or eliminate their processing fees, right? Merchants might not even be aware that exists. And, on that cash discount piece, like we always talk about, we and all of you out there sell a ton of it, right? It's at the forefront of everything that you do. Keep in mind, we're still at the tip of the iceberg on this program, folks. We have not even, dipped into the vast majority of merchants that are out there and that are aware of this program. I still talk to merchants and partners every day that have no idea that this program exists. So it's shocking, I know, because of how much we put out there, how much it's all over our industry, but it's the reality. So we have to keep pushing that. And even though merchants might be satisfied with what they're doing today, they don't even know that that's a problem. Paying those fees is a problem. Not having those types of solutions, making their business more efficient, is a problem. So whether they realize it's a problem or not, that's fine. And it's our job to go in there and point out not necessarily that they have a problem, but that we're going to make their lives and their business much better, much more efficient, and save them a ton of money while they're doing it.
If I could just piggyback on that just for a minute, the thing about this industry, merchants, okay, the credit card processing piece of their business is not. It's not the priority. Say it like it is, right? I mean, it's if you're owning a business, the credit card. Now it's part of the business, but I don't think it's a priority for the majority of the merchants. So as a salesperson in this industry, if you can get your merchant to where they're trusting you to take care of whatever it is that they need, and you're a phone call, a text, an email away, I think it's a win, right? And and I'll give you a quick example that happened to me yesterday. I've got a merchant of mine out in San Diego, California, and he had an issue with a chargeback, and and every one of our partners gets, if they call into tech support or customer service, they get an email. Well, and every time I get an email, I reach back out to the guy, and Jen Sales got on the phone with him yesterday, and we helped him solve the problem. So again, it's one of those things where, like, how in the world can a guy in San Diego, California, be processing with a company in Warsaw, Indiana? I've never met the guy because he trusts me, and he trusts that he knows that if something were to happen, he can call me. I'll answer the phone. I'll answer the text just about any time. And if you can get that with your merchants, then you're setting yourself apart.
It is. I mean, and setting yourself apart means understanding who you are and presenting that story. And you've been doing that now, I forget how many years, with the companies there and the towing companies there. I'm assuming this is the group that there in San Diego and Southern California. And you've been helping them understand and trust you for a long time. And that's you building a brand that is Brian Linke, LLC, PayProtech being sold by Brian Linke, and making sure they understand that the person that you are, the business that you're selling, is going to take care of them long term, even when there are problems, when there are struggles, when things are going on, and you following through on that story. So understanding who you are as a business person, who you are as a person, and making sure that you are telling others about that helps you to continue to start to develop that piece of brand, and make sure if you really have a good story, and that good story helps them understand how they fit into that story and how you're going to come alongside of them, and really they're the hero of your story and you're going to help them, you're going to sell significantly more than the person who just walks in, says, hey, you want to accept credit cards? Here's a machine. I can save you some money, versus a person that has a holistic picture of how this person's in this business is going to come alongside and make my business better. That's what branding is about. Brian, I hear you.
Nate, it's Linke Protech.
Oh, sorry. Linke Protect. That's my fault. My fault.
Protech.
It's every day. Every day here at PayProtech is Linke Protech.
But again, that guy out in San Diego, okay, I mean, if you don't think that he's got our competitors knocking on his door daily, every single day, okay, then you're delusional, because he's got our competitors knocking on his door every day. But he knows that, whatever the situation is, that I'm going to take care of. And if you can get that out of your merchants, I'm telling you, you're going to keep them forever. Your residual is going to continue to grow as they grow, and that just makes life a lot easier for everybody.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to keep talking about this for the weeks to come, but as we close out our time, let me bring up a little music. Today, the high five, as we continue talking about how developing your personal and business brand